Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you for your support. Thank you for going on this journey through our past and present. Today, the spotlight is on James Weldon Johnson, a poet and author, most known for writing what we call the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, but he was so much more than that. And so I'm going to share some of who he was with you today. James Weldon Johnson was born on June 17, 1871. He was a writer and civil rights activist. He was also a leader of the NAACP, where he started working in 1917. In 1920, he was chosen as executive secretary of the organization, effectively the operating officer. He served in that position from 1920 to 1930. He established his reputation as a writer and was known during the Harlem Renaissance for his poems, novels, and anthologies collecting both poems and spirituals of Black culture. He wrote the lyrics for Lift Every Voice and Sing, which later became known as the Black National Anthem. The music was written by his younger brother, composer J. Rosamond Johnson. James Weldon Johnson was appointed under President Theodore Roosevelt as U.S. Consul in Venezuela and Nicaragua for most of the period from 1906 to 1913. In 1934, he was the first African American professor to be hired at New York University. Later in life, he was a professor of creative literature and writing at Fisk University, a historically Black university. In recognition of his scholarship and impact, New York University established the James Weldon Johnson Professorship in 2020. And that's almost 100 years after he died. But he was very gifted and well educated and should be known for being the writer of the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, but he should also be acknowledged for in the totality of who he was, a very educated man, an activist, and a politician. But anyway, here's one of my favorite historians, and she's going to tell you some more about James Weldon Johnson.
They'll sing Lift Every Voice and Sing at graduations, at rallies, at games. But do they tell you about the man that wrote it? This man was not just a poet. He was a fighter who carried 10 lives in one body because America wouldn't even let him live one in peace. Meet James Weldon Johnson. He was born in 1871 in Jacksonville, Florida, a child of Reconstruction raised in a country already pulling the rug out from under Black freedom. His family believed education was a weapon, so he sharpened it. He studied at Atlanta University, came back home, and worked as a school principal. And while he was running that school, he was studying law on the side. And by 1897, he passed the bar and became one of the first Black lawyers in Florida. But even with that title, even with that brilliance, white supremacy still told him that you are less than. But Johnson refused to play small. He became a lawyer, a teacher, a writer, a musician. In 1900, he wrote a poem for a school program that his brother set to music. That poem became Lift Every Voice and Sing, our anthem, not America's, ours. He also wrote the autobiography of an ex-colored man, ripping open the wound of passing and identity. Then he went global, serving as U.S. Consul in Venezuela and Nicaragua, representing a country that wouldn't even protect him at home. He was proof you could outwork the limits that America tried to chain you with. Then came the fight. In 1917, after white mobs lynched and massacred Black people across the South, Johnson helped organize 10,000 men, women, and children to march silently down Fifth Avenue in New York. No chants, no music, just footsteps and grief. A funeral march for democracy. As executive secretary of the NAACP, he hunted down the truth about lynchings. He wrote the reports. He confronted Congress. He pushed the Dyer anti-lynching bill in 1922 and the Costigan-Wagner bill a decade later. And Congress, hijacked by Southern Democrats, killed them all. America chose to protect the rope over protecting Black life. He died in 1938 in a car accident in Maine. And here's the bitter truth. This country gave him flowers for the anthem, but not for the man. He gave us words that lifted generations, but the justice he fought for, the anti-lynching law, didn't pass until 2022, nearly a century after he begged for it. James Weldon Johnson was more than a writer. He was a soldier in a war that America still pretends isn't happening. He wrote, he taught, he fought, and he bled. Also, we'd have a language for survival. So the next time you hear Lift Every Voice and Sing, don't just sing it. Remember the man who wrote it, and the country that still hasn't caught up to his fire. Say his name, James Weldon Johnson.
James Weldon Johnson was indeed a towering figure of the early 20th century, a true Renaissance man whose legacy spans literature, music, diplomacy, education, and civil rights activism. And I want to acknowledge that even though he was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and lived his life as an American citizen in the United States, his family's origin was in the Bahamas. However, he was educated as well in the United States, graduated from Atlanta University in 1894, and earned a master's degree there. He also studied at Columbia University. His literary achievements are Lift Every Voice and Sing, which started out as a poem, and then his brother added music to it, and we still sing that groundbreaking song today. He authored the autobiography of an ex-colored man, a novel exploring racial identity in America, and he wrote God's Trombones, a celebration of sermons in verse, including the creation, which was such a big deal when I was in the segregated school. Somebody would recite that poem every Black History Month. If y'all are not familiar with that, look it up and read it because it's a really compelling poem. James Weldon Johnson and his brother wrote over 200 songs for the Broadway stage, contributing richly to American musical culture. James Weldon Johnson was married to Grace Nell Johnson, the daughter of a wealthy businessman and civil rights activist. They didn't have any children. He died in 1938 while vacationing in Wiscasset, Maine, when the car his wife was driving was hit by a train. His funeral in Harlem was attended by more than 1,000 people. Johnson's ashes are interred at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York. His legacy lives on through his writings, activism, and the enduring power of Lift Every Voice and Sing, and also of the wonderful poem, The Creation. I'm going to list a few of his legacies and honors. In 2007, Emory University in Atlanta established the James Weldon Johnson Institute for Advanced Interdisciplinary Studies in his honor, later renamed the James Weldon Johnson Institute for the Study of Race and Difference. They're finally realizing that they do need to study race because race has had a great impact on world affairs. The James Weldon Johnson Building at Coppin State University in Baltimore, Maryland, is named in his honor. The James Weldon Johnson Middle School in Jacksonville, Florida, the city of his birth, is named in his honor. The James Weldon Johnson Community Library in St. Petersburg, Florida, is named in his honor and to commemorate his birth in nearby Jacksonville. And here is a picture of the interior of that library. On February 2nd, 1988, the United States Postal Service issued a 22-cent postage stamp in his honor. On August 11th, 2020, the Jacksonville, Florida City Council renamed Hemming Park to James Weldon Johnson Park. In 2021, the Maine legislature designated June 17th James Weldon Johnson Annual Observance Day. Wow. The bill also created a task force of civil society organizations and Wiscasset residents to develop methods to educate the public on James Weldon Johnson's life and legacy in order to continue his work to end systemic racism. Okay, so that's quite an honor And so now you know more about this great man, James Weldon Johnson, an ancestor to be proud of. May he continue to rest in peace. Thank you for listening. Have a good evening.